Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to room 5. Let's welcome Ms. Emma Neuer-Reuter. She's Assistant Professor of Innovation Management and Director of the Master of Finance in Innovation from Neuchâtel Institute of Management. And she's presenting us the hybrid business models in the sharing economy. Please, Ms. Reuter.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's really a great pleasure to be able to join you and present this paper, which I published a couple of years ago. So it's essentially, as you mentioned already, on hybrid business models and the sharing economy. So the sharing economy, I think, is a term that has risen in interest in recent years. Goes with related notions of collaborative economy, access economy, sharing economy. And we see this phenomenon in a very varied number of different industries, be it accommodation, mobility, co-working, food, or as we were interested in electricity. So that's a particular context where we dived in and looked at sharing economy business models in the context of the electricity industry. More generally, and at a global scale, we see that the sharing economy worldwide has risen, the market potential has risen in recent years and is just going to grow or projected to grow even further going forward. If you look at the figures here from 2023 to 2031, well, almost a six-fold increase. So it's a phenomenon of great interest for us as business or management researchers, among others. And yes, as I mentioned, touching a great number of different industries. So what is the sharing economy? I would like to spend a few words on setting maybe the baseline or understanding from our perspective what sharing economy is all about. Well, it has been in the landmark article by Tommy Lahmann and colleagues been defined as a socio-economic ecosystem, so involving different stakeholders, connecting different stakeholders through information technology like digital platforms, in particular to make value by sharing access capacities for products and services. So it's a marketplace, one could say, that connects providers of services and buyers of services or assets, and connecting stakeholders that wouldn't have been connected otherwise before. So we have on the one side buyers who offer assets, and we have sellers who request the use of assets. And in the previous world, they wouldn't have been connected, but we can create a new marketplace. We can create new value by bringing these two actors together in so-called sharing economy. And that is facilitated by digital platforms, so online marketplaces, facilitated by digital platforms, which can be seen as matchmaking technologies between providers and consumers to facilitate the sharing of access products and service capacities. So that's it in a nutshell for the sharing economy. What we were particularly interested in this phenomenon is that the sharing economy is very often seen as being beneficial for the environment, because we essentially make use of assets that otherwise wouldn't have been used before, of access products and services, while we may decrease the need to own products because we can just access them on a temporary basis. So there has been some claims that sharing economy has a very important benefit on the environment. But on the other side, as well, it can also, on the other side, have a negative impact on the environment. And I will go through this in a couple of seconds. And this has been broadly referred to as the environmental paradox. On the one side, these tensions, be it on one side the environmental goals, on the other side, financial value creation goals. So on the one side, the sharing economy or digital platforms, by enabling this sharing economy, they can reduce resource consumption, thereby realizing environmental value and having a positive impact on the environment, because they essentially can reduce the need for consumers to own resources by enabling a more collaborative use of resources. So let's think of the mobility sector of car sharing and ride sharing services. There has been quite a number of studies and research that has shown that by having access to such car sharing and ride sharing services, well, that can actually lead to a net decrease in car use. Because we can pool services, mobility trajectories into more collaborative mobility. And also such car sharing or ride sharing services can de facto reduce the need to own a car, because people can just access these services on a temporary basis, so they don't have to invest into their own car, into owning a car. So there can be an important positive impact on the environment, as this literature would say. But on the other side, the literature has also shown that there are important rebound effects, in particular in the mobility sector again. So having access in a cheaper and perhaps more practical way to such services, well, rather than decreasing the need for mobility services, it has been shown that it can also increase the need for car using, because it's so practical, so convenient to access, and perhaps also cheaper. So on the other side, these digital platforms, one could say, promote resource consumption and thereby also realizing financial value, because platforms value creation depends on the number of transactions that are done over the platform, on the number of buyers and sellers that are connected to these platforms. And so essentially, they can realize financial value through new revenue streams and creating profits. And as I said, the primary driver of this is because it's often cheaper, more practical to access resources via these platforms rather than owning them. So we were particularly interested in this tension between, on the one side, digital platform being able to reduce resource consumption and creating environmental value, and on the other side, promoting resource consumption and creating financial value. That led us to ask this very interesting question of, well, how can platform providers actually reconcile both goals? On the one side, fostering environmental value, but also as market actors having to succeed, also creating financial value. So we looked into the literature on hybrid organizing, which essentially deals with this question of how can organizations manage the tensions associated with multiple goals. And we were particularly interested in looking at this hybrid of how digital platform providers can actually reconcile these environmental and financial goals at the level of their business model. Design, because we know that organizations that can integrate multiple goals, well, that has a positive impact. They are recognized as being more legitimate, more likely to succeed in the long run. And the failure of organizations to reconcile multiple goals, well, that has the potential to exacerbate tensions, conflict, and often leading to failure. So that's why we asked this very interesting question of how can platform organizations reconcile both financial and environmental value creation goal at the level of their business model. To answer that question, we performed a case study of a young startup called Picklo in the UK. And in particular of Picklo Flex, which is a marketplace for local flexibility in the energy industry. So essentially, Picklo Flex represents a digital platform that facilitates a sharing economy for flexibility services. I will explain what that notion is about in a couple of seconds. And in particular, by matching consumers and providers of flexibility, or in other words, by providing a flexibility marketplace. So Picklo was founded in 2013 by 3 entrepreneurs to basically revolutionize the electricity sector, or let's say to make it make grids smarter, more flexible, more sustainable, and essentially through that main product, which was this marketplace. It was previously known as Open Utility, but has changed the name to Piclo. Quite shortly after their founding, they already won several awards as Startup of the Year in 2014. They have also been featured in Bloomberg's top 50 business innovators, and since then, I guess, a range of further awards and recognitions, not least having been selected for the Global Cleantech 100 for several years in a row until today, and have grown significantly since then. So what is flexibility? Well, flexibility is essentially a term that describes this possibility of reducing peaks in the grid or in electricity provision by either adding volume or reducing the volume of electricity in specific locations, or by timing supply and demand. So in other words, it can relate to adding electricity when needed, or when there's excess electricity in the grid, to provide efficiency or storage solutions to basically reduce that excess electricity. And as in any marketplace, there are different parties, in 3 different parties. On one side, we have sellers, so providers of flexibility. We have, on the other side, buyers. So providers of flexibility could be well, any kind of provider of electricity, be this some renewable sources, distributed sources, any other electricity provider. Could be storage capacity, for example, pertaining to storage capacities in batteries, in electric vehicles, and so forth. Buyers of flexibility, well, in that case, here it's mostly grid operators who have particular needs with respect to peak loads or reduced electricity provision. And then we have the market facilitator, which is essentially the platform that connects the sellers and buyers at the level of the platform, or in other words, that matches the flexibility needs and services provided. The platform engages in traditional platform activities, so simplifying transactions between sellers and buyers, for example, by offering maintenance, demand supply matching, auctions, handling payments, other kind of IT services that are required to be able to connect the platform, and so forth. Importantly, this marketplace in this context is independent, so it can be opened up to any provider. And that's basically one of the more transformative elements of this platform. So people like you and me could connect to this platform by bringing in our electric vehicles and its storage capacity, or by bringing in the excess electricity that we might be able to produce through our solar panels. So rather than being only focused on established providers in the industry, what this platform essentially does is that it is independent and it can be opened up to any kind of provider, buyer or seller. And that opens up the range of solutions that we can bring to the problem of the problems that electricity grids face, congestion problems and so forth. So that's I think one of the crux or the key elements that this platform essentially facilitates. So Piclo Flex, this marketplace for local flexibility launched by Piclo, was launched in the UK in 2018. It has continuously grown since then. It has been expanded to several other countries since then. And here's a kind of a graphical representation that can be found on their website. So on the left side, you have these providers of flexibility servers, be this aggregators, batteries, electric vehicles, distributed energy resource or distributed energy providers and so forth. So coming from different kind of renewable sources. And on the right side, we have the buyers. So these are mainly grid operators, like transmission service organizations, distribution service organizations, or any other kind of buyer that has flexibility needs. And in the middle, we have the platform that facilitates the connections between these different buyers and these different sellers. So why, again, is this marketplace for local flexibility so interesting? While essentially provides local responses to meet local network constraints, as mentioned before. For example, moments where the grid fails to supply sufficient electricity to meet the current demand, or when there's a peak demand to provide, or when there are peak loads, so essentially congestion problems and so forth. So the idea is to bring some solutions to these problems without having to invest into network extension, because the traditional solution would be, we have some moments of peak demand, well, then we need to invest into the network, expand it to be able to meet that demand. But here we are looking for other solutions that can forego such investments. On the other side, it also provides opportunities for asset owners or for storage operators by enabling new revenue sources to them. So giving actors who otherwise wouldn't have had access to such marketplaces and such markets the possibility to make money. So creating new revenue sources, making more efficient use of their assets and so forth. And so to give some figures on this, for the UK's energy system to transition to a net zero carbon system by 2050, the potential of flexibility has been estimated to reduce network investments by 50% and the whole system cost by £4.5 billion per year by 2050. So it would make that transition much more economical, much more efficient. So flexibility has a real business value. And that's why that marketplace has such a great opportunity in the context of a net zero transition. In particular here, figures for the UK, but obviously in any other country as well. So not surprisingly, they have expanded to a range of other countries since then. What we were particularly interested in, as mentioned before, is to better understand how PeakLoopX realizes both these financial and environmental value creation goals. Financial, because as a startup, it's to grow, it's a business, but environmental as well, ensuring that it creates a positive impact on the environment. So we looked at this from the perspective of business model design. This can be mapped as this figure below here shows, and I will go through this in a couple of seconds. So we basically looked at two things. On one side, what specific activities does this digital platform conduct? What are key activities of the platform at the level of the business model? And then secondly, how can they be aggregated into more general design themes that circumscribes how the platform creates value? And that is drawn from the activity systems perspective on business models, mainly introduced by Christoph Zott and Raphael Amit. So what we found is two major business model design themes, which we labeled redistribution and accessibility. Redistribution being a theme that is related to the platform's environmental value creation, and accessibility being a theme that is related to the platform's financial value creation. And so what kind of activities do we have underneath these two themes? Well, for redistribution, we saw, well, the platform essentially emphasizes an efficient use of existing resources. So essentially enabling that matchmaking between providers' surplus or excess capacities and consumers' needs in a way that hasn't been provided before. So by essentially connecting providers and consumers that hadn't been connected before, while the platform facilitates a more efficient use of existing assets, right? So you and me having solar panels that create excess electricity at a certain point in time. In a previous world, we wouldn't have been able to create value from that, commercial, to sell that, to share that. But through this platform, well, essentially, if we have a buyer, well, we can essentially make money on our excess electricity produced. And at the same time, also creating new uses for otherwise idle flexibility. So as mentioned, otherwise it wouldn't have perhaps entered the market. Secondly, they emphasize the governance of resource use by making that more transparent. So basically transparently showing what kind of electricity sources are used at a certain point in time, and integrating the different rules associated with these different forms of electricity use. Secondly, for the accessibility theme, well, what we have seen at the level of that business model design is that, well, basically they emphasize accessibility to consumers. So any kind of consumer could access this marketplace, and also any kind of provider could access this marketplace, you and me, as well as established players in the energy industry. And that's precisely one of the value drivers, important value drivers of such platform, is to expand the network of consumers and buyers, of consumers and providers, and of expanding the number of transactions that they engage in. So not only expanding the range of consumers and the range of providers, but also the number of services, ancillary services, one could say, that the platform would provide to them. So facilitating, making that transaction between the two as smooth as possible, and reducing any kind of hassle that one would need to, what one would otherwise face. Making that as convenient and easy to use as possible. So these two themes, as mentioned, can be associated with, on one side, environmental value creation. So this redistribution design theme, representing the degree of use of otherwise underutilized flexibility, which fosters environmental value creation by reducing consumption, overall consumption, and this accessibility design theme, which represents the degree of market access granted to consumers and providers, which essentially drives this financial value creation and overall promotes consumption. What we saw is that while Picoflex manages to reconcile both value creation goals into what we call a hybrid business model design by providing access to a redistribution market. And that was the interesting finding of the study. So rather than focusing only on one of the two, they managed to integrate both into what we call a hybrid business model design, giving access to a redistribution market, right? So combining the two. And so one step further, we asked ourselves the question, well, what is it that enables them to realize such a hybrid business model design? And what we found is two major factors from our research. First, they leveraged what we call strategic synergies. So essentially those activities through which managers exploit complementarities between multiple design themes. So in particular, what they realized and what they exploited is this idea that, well, flexibility can represent cost-saving opportunities for consumers, so distributors, grid operators who could save up to 50% or more than 50% in cost. Remember before when I talked about the UK's energy transition and the potential to save more than 50% of costs of that otherwise would have to go into grid investments. So there's a huge cost-saving potential. And on the other side, giving the providers like you and me or any other provider possibilities to make money, to create new value, to stack revenues by selling excess flexibility and increasing our assets' economic efficiency. So by matching, seeking the complementarities between these two opportunities, or realizing what we call strategic synergies, that was one of the key elements that made it possible for them to realize that hybrid business model design. Second key element is what we refer to as dynamic coupling. So these are activities through which managers adapt the platform's market and technology design to the multiple design themes requirements. So what does that mean? First, the market coupling. Well, by essentially bringing in, I'll give you an example. If a distributor has a problem with network congestion, again, previously, it would have had to invest into the expansion of the grid. But now with this kind of solutions, well, they can have different types of solutions that could compete to solve the problem. So bringing in either storage solutions or energy efficiency services. And these storage solutions could come from batteries, from EVs, and so forth. That's the novelty. So bringing in different solutions to compete for solving the same problem. But by bringing in these different solutions, well, one also has to fulfill the different requirements of these different solutions, the regulatory requirements. And that was a big task to essentially see, well, how can we bring all these market and regulatory requirements of these different solutions into one single marketplace? Which was one of which we called market coupling, as they successfully succeeded. The second element is what we call technology coupling, which was essentially the entire technology backend behind it, the entire technology infrastructure, which mostly relies on automation of all these processes through APIs. So two factors, strategic synergies and dynamic coupling, as we found, enabled this platform to reconcile these different design themes together. Right, it's leading to our final picture of this activity system or of this business model design. So what are key takeaways from this study? Well, first, yes, the sharing economy has, or organizations, platforms operating in the sharing economy face this environmental paradox. And as we find, well, the way that they design a business model can help them manage this paradox by particularly looking at the different design themes through which business models are designed. The redistribution design theme, as we label it, helps lever the platform's environmental value creation. The accessibility design theme, as we labeled it, levers the platform's financial value creation. And what we call access to a redistribution market theme levers the platform's combined environmental and financial value creation. And finally, two factors, strategic synergies and dynamic coupling, enable the platform to realize that hybrid business model design, to realize that design theme of giving access to a redistribution market. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very eager to hear any questions.
Is there any question from the in-person attendees or the question from online people? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Reuter. I think there is no question for your presentation. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you very much. So how many people, I'm not sure I see how many people have been joining the session.
There are 3 people in person and 10 people on the Zoom.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I remain available as well at a distance if there are any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.